G'day, folks. Today I thought I'd go through the perfect 10 players to start a list with. So, the premise here is really, let's say I'm starting a new team in Tasmania to make up a 19th team. Well, if I could have any 10 players either existing on an AFL list or will be coming onto AFL lists in coming years, well, these are the 10 that I'm going with. And there is that creative license element, I suppose, in picking a couple of players who aren't AFL listed, in particular one that isn't even eligible this year. But yeah, look, give me access to any talent, and these are the guys that I'm bringing in personally. So starting off, so Sam Darcy. So what really appeals here is not only did he show promise in his first year as a key position player, but he did so as a super tall key position player, and he's demonstrated a rapid rate of development. Well, there's been a lot of rapidly developing key position players over time who have been absolutely sensational and have really gone on to cause problems for the rest of the competition. And when you're doing so at that, whether it's 207 centimeters or whatever is measuring in at the moment, maybe it's 208, 208, 209, basically Sam Darcy is going to be a problem. And whether you use him in defense, you put him forward, yeah, he's going to really cause some issues. So for the purposes of my team, I'd be drafting him as a key forward. For me, he's certainly got key forward talent. And yeah, he would be, I'm not saying necessarily my first pick, but yeah, basically I could say he's in that conversation with Dacos and Horne-Francis, where, as I predicted last year, they'd be the three best in last year's draft. And yeah, I would still certainly be looking at them as some of the most desirable players to start a list with. I think there's huge scope with a Darcy. Looking forward to a Nick Dacos. So I was really surprised actually this year seeing him in defence. So it's not even necessarily his best position, which might be the scary thing. But for me, honestly, on impact per game, I actually thought Dacos was Collingwood's best and most important player. So I'd even go as far as to say that. Just the sheer rebounding, the quality of rebound. Whenever it was a close game, it felt like he was really, I guess, pressing things from defense with that rebound and really generating a lot of important offense. But my future outlook with Dacos is actually that he'll become more of a mid-forward combo and really impact across both positions. Because for those that have only seen him this year, you probably won't be aware that in his 5 NAB League games, well, he was averaging 36 disposals and 2 goals. Well, no one's ever managed that many disposals per game. So not even Will Ashcroft in this year's draft, who's as close as we've seen otherwise. So yeah, so with a Nick Dacos, I would be bringing him in an absolute hurry. And really just provides that class as that, you could call him a smaller Pendlebury, but forward of centre with those elements of Didac, to put it in Collingwood's terms. So they're the things to look out for in future seasons, because basically everything he does in traffic is beautiful, and then forward of centre, he's hitting the scoreboard a bit like his father. So real weapon up forward, and just, yeah, finds a way to just, yeah, hit the scoreboard in absolute bulk. Harley Reid, so this is the one that maybe some people consider risky given he's not even eligible this year, and I can completely understand that. But for any that saw his game for Vic Country against Vic Metro, the final under-18 champs game, well, you would have been walking away thinking he's better than Will Ashcroft. And I can understand why you'd be thinking that. Not necessarily that he's been as good throughout the rest of the year, but in that game he was the best of field. He was the best performed on that day. So whether you've got him behind the ball, intercepting, generating rebound, whether it's with his run or by foot, or whether you're putting him forward, he can isolate one-on-one in the goal square and cause problems, is that sort of medium sizer, I suppose. And then you can put him through the midfield. He can win the footy, and yeah, he'll generate some run through there as well. So real weapon. You can look at him as something like a cross between a Dusty Martin and a Luke Hodge. So not to put too heavy of a burden of expectation on him, but yeah, at this stage he's looking like the consensus number 1 pick for next year's draft. So yeah, certainly a name to watch out for next year. And one where, again, a bit like a Dacos, what I really like and appreciate is that he's not limited to just dominating in one position. So when you've got guys where they can play forward, back, midfield, whether it's inside, outside, and really play good footy, as I'd say, from a Dacos or a Reid, well, yeah, that's really advantageous for the purposes of a team. just because it allows you to fit so many different players alongside them and they can really adjust accordingly. And I'd say similar of a Horne-Francis. So he can play both midfield and forward to a high level. So with the likes of a Dacos and a Horne-Francis, my belief still is, and I said this last year and I'll say it again this year, I believe both can be top 10 quality mids in the comp with also the forward craft to really impact forward of centre. So that's the thing to watch for both of them. And look, Horne-Francis's first year was absolutely a disappointment, but now actually understanding, I guess, the level of difficulty he experienced this year with North Melbourne in terms of the function with the blood flow in his legs, I can sort of understand and appreciate now why he wasn't the same player that he was at the end of the 2021 season in the Sandful against league opposition. So, and what he was doing in the Sandful against league opposition, he became over that sort of final series, even those last few rounds of the season, the best player in that competition. So doing that against men in one of the best state leagues in the country, and really they're all sort of on par, that's absolutely terrific that Horne-Francis could even be doing that. So, I'm expecting a big rebound for Port Adelaide, and I think he'll have an absolutely terrific career, needless to say. And for the purposes of this team, so the sheer pressure and application defensively would be an absolute asset, because you will, when you've got a team of all the best players in the country, have those more offensive styled players. So having a Horne-Francis who really defensively can cause problems, I think that's a huge asset for the purposes of this team. But he's got the ball winning, he's got the burst as well. And then forward of centre, well, he's a weapon in terms of particularly what he can do aerially. So, still really like him and still rate him. So, when I end up doing a redo of last year's draft, well, you've got Darcy, Dacos, Horne-Francis. I haven't decided on an order. This list is completely out of order. Haven't given it a moment's thought as to who of those three, if I could just have one, I would pick. But there is no meaningful separation, is what I'll certainly be saying today. I think all three of those will be the best three in last year's draft, just as I said 12 months ago to you at home. Will Ashcroft, best player in this year's draft, most advanced, and just in terms of the sheer contested ball winning first possession, that burst from the contest, the run-in support as well. So let's say a Tom Green wins first possession, well, we can dish out to an Ashcroft who's already going to be on the run, on the move, and even if he doesn't receive, well, is running in support. So in that respect, absolute weapon of a player through there. So not necessarily someone with the versatility of the likes of a Dacos, a Reed, or even to a lesser degree a Horne-Francis, but certainly as a young midfielder, in terms of pure young midfielders, well, he's better than your Walshes, your Smiths, your Rowells, Andersons. Ashcroft is more advanced than those guys at the same age. So there is a reason on espn.com.au I made an article about Dacos and Ashcroft and who's the better player of them, because ultimately they're the two most dominant players that I've seen in the NAB League across all my years. That's even going back TAC Cup days. And certainly in terms of production, there's no one that really closely matches either. So they're both absolute machines and project, at least, to have amazing AFL careers. In terms of key defenders, clearly the best option for me is Sam Taylor. By far and away the best young key defender in the comp. And look, he could even be the best key defender in the comp today, I could make an argument for. So, just as that sort of piece to build around in defence, I think, he's definitely the guy for me. You've got Shea Bolton, so being able to have the options. Again, it's that versatility, being able to really, I guess, destroy teams as a forward, but then push through the midfield and really rotate between those two positions at a rate where he's going to get some mismatches and be able to take advantage. Well, that's a real weapon for this team that I can really appreciate, that adds substantial value. So having the good mids, having the good forwards, being able to rotate them, that's the style of game that I'd really be going for. And for me, they're the highest value players, those top end mids that really can do other things in other positions as well. So they're not just limited to the mids, because it just means that you can really bring in the best other players as they come up and really put them in their best positions, so that you can have these guys who can really just fit around them with absolute ease. So that would be the play, certainly, when I've got the access to any player in the comp. Chad Warner, he became a terrific midfielder, didn't he, this year? He's an absolute weapon, it's fair to say, hitting the scoreboard, has the burst, wins it. He's an absolute ripper. So hard to leave out for me from his draft class. If I was to do a redo, well, based on what he did this year, he really has to have taken over as that number one player. It's fair to say. Tom Green, look, this is probably the more speculative pick on this list if I was to call someone speculative. And some people might laugh at that, saying, well, you've got Reed and Ashcroft who aren't even on AFL lists yet. But yeah, look, with a Green, this is my opinion. So in terms of first possession winners as juniors, I've never seen anyone get to first possessions more and win it than Tom Green. Obviously doesn't have the weapons or the versatility of a lot of the other players on this list, but if I want to win first possession, I want Green at the coalface, and I think he'll become that guy at AFL level. So, yeah, with Hopper and Taranto leaving, I think Tom Green, it really opens him up to become one of, if not the best pure first possession winner and distributor in the comp. So, for those Supercoach players out there, I would not be surprised if Green became the number one Supercoach player in the comp in 2023. So, early call, big call, but yeah, I think he's really got that ceiling where with, I guess, that opportunity to be that first possession winner and not really having as much competition through there, that's really going to help him immensely to fulfill his full potential. So, yeah, watch out for Green over coming years. And Max King. So, yeah, sort of that, I guess, best young established key forward, if you want to call him that. And then giving him a Sam Darcy as well in that same front half is amazing. Giving him that genuine second option. But yeah, Max King, genuine go-to guy inside 50. Obviously doesn't necessarily have the reliability in front of goal, but yeah, look, you'd hope that can be worked on at least. So yeah, that's my 10. And then if I'm to go through, I guess, in a best 22 context and what they would look like on paper, and look, you can chuck these players in any number of positions. So I could easily just go Dacos forward, and for the purposes of this, I probably would just to, yeah, work it better. But yeah, look, obviously Taylor is the, I guess, major piece in defence, and you build around him. Horne-Francis I like most through the midfield, but can go forward. Warner I could just easily switch into the midfield. He'll get heavy midfield minutes. Dacos I'd be rotating mid-forward, but look, depending on the other pieces I bring in, maybe it just means he stays in defence. So you've got all those options. Don't worry too much about the positions. Harley Reid, again, I could very easily fit back if I've got other good forwards that need to go there. Max Kin, Bolton, Green, Ashcroft, genuine mid, so you have to put him there. And with a Darcy, I think in the long run, he'll probably adopt some ruck minutes, but certainly until he's sort of in his mid-20s, I'd say probably not before 25 would I actually be exposing him to ruck minutes. Until then, I'd just say, look, keep him as a key position player. He's still developing physically, and it's really once those types really hit their mid-20s when they become good rucks. So that would be my thinking there with a Sam Darcy. But in terms of some of the questions people might have, so you might instantly be thinking, well, why is there no Ruckman in this group? And the reason is simple. So, firstly, in the rookie draft, typically, that's where so many of the best Ruckmen have come historically, whether it's a Dean Cox, an Aaron Sandilands, Shane Mumford, Darren Jolly. In more recent years, you could say Rowan Marshall has developed from there as a mature age ruck. So, you can get amazing ruckmen from the rookie drafts, and the list goes on. They're just a few names top of mind. But yeah, you've got that option available, but you've also got every trade period, it seems, there is a good ruckman available who can be secured below what their on-field production appears like can be the case with a change of club and greater opportunity. So happens every year, where you don't have to pay so much as a first rounder. You can pay second rounders. Sometimes it's even third rounders for genuine number one rucks. So if I can only have access to 10 players to start a team with, well, I would then be exploring those in particular trade options for that immediacy. But then I'd be also looking to the rookie draft to see, can I develop someone as well? So if I'm building a list, well, unless there was someone who really stood out and had to be there, look, I'm favouring other positions as a result, because it is easy to acquire those really good ruckmen. Other things people might be wondering, why no second key defender? Look, for me, again, a bit like Ruckman, though not to the same extent, they're fairly easy to get. So whether it's through the draft, you can get them, whether it's mid-draft, late draft, rookie draft, there's often options. You can often trade for them as well. And you can also oftentimes make a strong marking key forward. If you switch them back behind the ball, you can make them into good key defenders. If they can read the game, if they're strong contested marks, well, that often translates to being a good key defender. And if I was just to look at this year's draft, well, I could look at someone like a Ethan Phillips in the VFL who, in the second round would be a great option as a key defender for this type of team, where, look, he led the VFL in intercept marks per game, intercept possessions, and then also marks per game. So doing that in the VFL, being rock solid one-on-one, he would be a very natural fit for this type of team and would easily fill that second key defense void. So there are always those options available where you don't necessarily have to pay up and get the most elite options there, when there's other positions that are harder to get the same quality in, I would argue. Why general defenders aren't necessarily a priority? Again, they're types where you don't have to use early picks, and a lot of the good ones don't actually come from early picks. So a lot of the time you can actually get them as state leaguers. So whether it's the likes of your Tom Stewarts, your Luke Ryans, you've got all these guys over time, Adam Sards. So they've been All-Australians in recent years. I think they might have even actually all three of them been in this year's All-Australian team, if not certainly in recent years. But the point is, you don't need early picks or the most premium general defenders. It's a position where you don't necessarily need that early draft type superiority of talent. You can get them quite a bit more easily than that. So given that it's not a priority, I can just swing a day cost forward again and just find those general defenders. So I can look at a Casey Voss in this year's draft to give you a name where I can very easily fit him into this type of team at absolutely no cost. I could just use a rookie pick and probably get him. What else? So why no wings? So again, it's the type of position where you don't necessarily have to have that early pick, but additional to that, this is the argument I would make. So this is my opinion, but if I'm to look at the last 20 to 25 years, all the best, let's call it top 20 midfielders across that time, none of them are pure outside players. Every one of them is, to a degree at least, sort of that centre bounce midfielder who, in some instances, maybe they've got the versatility to push forward and or back as well. But yeah, in terms of a pure wing who only plays exclusively as a wing, I can't make an argument there's a single one that I would consider. I could even expand it out to a top 25 midfielders list. There is not one that I would consider in that bracket. So given that, I really value inside midfielders, and particularly those inside midfielders with the versatility to play other spots, to a far greater degree. So personal opinion, a lot of people in recent years have been big on the value of outside mids, or in particular pure wings, but for me, I don't value them nearly as highly as it seems others do. I just don't see that same level of value, because ultimately they're not the match winners like all these guys here. So really, I have to give them a lower valuation as a result. Biggest regret for the purposes of this team, I would say, look, it would be nice if I could have an 11th player. I would probably be looking towards another great key forward. So obviously I've invested heavily in terms of those mids who can go forward in particular, and that's huge in terms of value to winning. Pretty much every premiership team has had those genuine mid-forward match winners. But just in terms of how difficult it is to get the great key forwards, look, given that scarcity and given really almost all the good ones come from first round picks, so those that are sort of your All-Australian caliber types, given that, I would be saying, look, if I could have another great key forward to add to this group, that's probably what I would be looking at. And the other thing people might be querying is, well, where's the veteran leaders? Don't you need veteran leaders to build a winner? Well, I would absolutely agree with any who say that you absolutely do need veteran leaders to build a winner. So, but the point of this team, of course, is you want a group of players who you're projecting ahead at least to have 200 plus games ahead of them of extraordinarily high value. And if not, you want 300 plus as the more ideal outcome, and you want most of them really reaching that milestone. But in terms of, well, how can you actually get veteran leaders? Well, you don't have to pay up extraordinarily high amounts to actually get them. So quite often, basically, they're being forced out and forced into retirement. So we can look at what Hawthorn have done over the years with their three-peat group, or their three premiership group, I mean to say, where you've had the likes of Luke Hodge, you've had Sam Mitchell, you've had Jordan Lewis, you've had Isaac Smith. They've all moved on and achieved success with their new teams, and they didn't require any meaningful cost to acquire. They still had more good football left in them, respectively. And out of those, the only one that actually hasn't eventually, even if it's after their retirement, translated into a premiership has been Luke Hodge. And in the case of his influence at Brisbane, well, before he was there, well, you had a wooden spoon team that couldn't retain any meaningful talent. Whereas, well, after Hodge has been there and since retired, well, when he was there, he actually took them from the bottom team to a top 4 team in a genuine sort of contending group. But even since they've been able to maintain that, and they've really been a club where not only have they been able to retain players, but they've actually been able to add more talent incredibly. So the likes of Josh Dunkley and Jack Gunston this off-season, maybe that helps them, as well as the addition of Will Ashcroft to become a premiership team. So you can really see that level of turnaround impact when you have a Luke Hodge. And of course, it's not just all about Luke Hodge, but you've got an Isaac Smith, well, Geelong Premiership, Norm Smith Medal on that group. Again, Jordan Lewis, well, Melbourne after his retirement won a flag. Sam Mitchell was there 1 year. The next year they won a flag. I don't think there's any coincidence to that. I think it really helps not only the youth development, but the cohesion and buy-in from the group. So absolutely, that's a vital ingredient. But would I be taking one at the expense of these? No, I would just be simply looking in the trade market, and for any of those that seem to be, whether it's slightly out of favour or any that I can wiggle loose at any cost, I would be really looking to do that quite aggressively to build a winning list ultimately. So let me know in the comments section below who would be in your perfect 10 to start a list with. Who from my list do you not agree with, and who should be there, and who are you outraged not to see? Who's your favourite player who really should be on here? I'd be very much interested to know. And before I conclude as well, on espn.com.au, so this is my silly season, to say the least, where basically I'm just churning out pieces very regularly for ESPN. So my most recent is Dacos versus Ashcroft, so how the father-sons compare. So as I alluded to in the video, they're the best Victorian prospects and the most dominant at that NAB League or under 18 age that I've seen. So I'm not saying necessarily that they project to have the best careers, but certainly in terms of performance at that age and stage, there's been no one better than Ashcroft and Dacos respectively. So it's fair to say that it's a fair comparison, and there's not much in it at all. They're both absolutely fantastic players. So give that a read to really understand the nuance and differences between how they play and the things to look out for. Because some of the things they were both doing as juniors, there's a lot in there that a lot of people at home won't be aware of. So that's a good read, and one that was really inspired by my idea last year to talk about the Dacos Horne-Francis, who was better, because they, for me, last year were my two top prospects. This year, of course, Ashcroft is that clear standout number one for me in terms of that immediacy of impact. So just comparing him to Dacos was really the natural comparison for him, was my thinking behind that. And I've also, in the past week, since my most recent YouTube video, I've completed a redraft of the 2017 draft. So there's a few interesting calls in there. I'd be really interested to see who are your preferred, but I had a really clear top 4 from that group. So I'd be interested to know from you at home if you agree on some of those names as well. But there's another piece dropping on espn.com.au/AFL tomorrow. But look out any of the articles listed Chris Dorey. They're all my ones. So you'll get a lot of draft content at this time of year. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you follow me on Twitter at AFL Draft Expert, because this is the place you can go to basically follow all my work. So I'll post up all my ESPN links if you don't want to just keep checking in on what I'm doing on ESPN. And I'll also be, during the draft, at least in years past, and I'll probably do the same again this year, I've actually been live tweeting as all the picks have come out, not only sort of who the player is that each club have picked, but basically a little bit of detail as to, well, who are they and how do they play. So if I've got time, I might do that as well this year. So yeah, make sure you get behind me on Twitter. And also, if you haven't already, on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and of course, like the video if you enjoyed it. But yeah, more video content to come. I will, once my AFL draft power rankings are on ESPN, I will be doing an updated tier list. So what I'll do, I'll actually order them fully 1 to 100. So if that's not a good reason to subscribe to my YouTube, well, I don't know what is. But yeah, fair to say there's more YouTube content to come. And also once that's dropped as well, that would be the opportunity as well, because I've had a lot of requests for me to do these sort of videos where I'm doing, whether it's a top, let's call it 50 across the last, call it 5 years, or that sort of concept of videos, or chuck the last 2 drafts together, who are the top, let's call it 40 from that, or whatever the case may be. So once my sort of November power rankings are up on ESPN, that gives me the chance where I can explore some of those. So if I notice there's quite a lot of interest on my YouTube in the coming sort of days and weeks leading up to the draft, well, I might explore some of those pieces as well if there's particular requests. I've got a list of a few that I'll certainly be considering, time permitting at least. But yeah, anyway, folks, see you in the next video.